What if the person who keeps pulling away from you is not trying to erase you from their life? What if their distance is not proof that they stopped caring, but proof that they are struggling with feelings they do not know how to handle? Because sometimes the person who disappears is not always the person who feels nothing. Sometimes they are the person who feels too much, too fast, and does not have the emotional tools to stay present when closeness starts to feel real. And that is what makes dealing with an avoidant so confusing. They can make you feel wanted one moment and completely shut out the next. They can come close, say something meaningful, share a quiet moment, and then suddenly become distant, cold, or hard to reach. And if you are on the receiving end of that, it can feel like emotional whiplash. You start asking yourself questions you cannot answer. Did I do something wrong? Did they lose interest? Was the connection only real to me? But with an avoidant, the truth is rarely that simple. Their distance does not always mean absence of feeling. Sometimes, distance is their way of surviving the very connection they secretly do not want to lose. 1. They pull away, but they never fully disappear. One of the clearest signs that an avoidant still feels something is that they create distance, but they do not completely vanish. They may stop texting as often. They may become quieter. They may act like they need space, but somehow they always find a way back. Maybe they send a small message after days of silence. Maybe they react to something you post. Maybe they check in casually, pretending it means less than it actually does. To you, it may feel confusing, because if they care, why leave? And if they do not care, why return? That question is exactly where the avoidant conflict lives. A truly indifferent person does not keep circling back. A person who has emotionally disconnected does not keep looking for tiny openings to re-enter your world. But an avoidant often lives between two opposite forces. One part of them wants connection. Another part of them fears what connection demands. So they step back when things feel too close, but they return when the distance starts to feel too empty. This does not mean you should wait forever. It does not mean their behavior is automatically healthy. But it does mean their return is not meaningless. When someone repeatedly comes back, especially with small signs of emotional awareness, it often means the bond still has weight. The important thing is not just that they return. The important thing is whether each return carries even a small shift. Are they a little more open? A little more careful? A little more honest? A little more willing to stay present? Because return without growth becomes a cycle, but return with reflection can become a sign of slow emotional movement. 2. Their vulnerability comes in small pieces. An avoidant rarely opens their heart all at once. They usually do not sit down and say, "I'm scared of how much I feel." They do not easily confess, "I want you, but closeness makes me panic." Instead, their vulnerability comes in fragments. A sentence they say quickly and then move away from. A moment where their voice softens. A look that says more than their words. A pause before they change the subject. A small confession hidden inside a casual conversation. And if you are not paying attention, you may miss it. Because avoidant vulnerability does not usually look dramatic. It does not look like crying, begging, or giving long emotional speeches. It often looks quiet, controlled, almost accidental. But that does not mean it is not real. For someone who has spent years protecting themselves, even a small, honest moment can feel terrifying. They may want to tell you more, but the moment they feel exposed, their nervous system tells them to retreat. So they open the door slightly, then close it again. They let you see a piece of them, then act like it did not happen. And this can hurt, because you may feel like you were finally getting close, only for them to pull away right after. But that opening still matters. It shows there is something inside them trying to reach you, even if fear keeps interrupting it. 3. They show care through actions more than words. If you are waiting for an avoidant to constantly reassure you with words, you may feel disappointed again and again. Many avoidants struggle with direct emotional expression. Words feel too exposing. Promises feel too risky. Deep conversations feel like a place where they could lose control. So instead of saying what they feel, they often show it indirectly. They remember small details. They show up when it matters. They help in practical ways. They respond when something is serious. They make time, even if they pretend it is casual. They may not say, "I miss you," but they might suddenly appear when they sense you are pulling away. They may not say, "You matter to me," but they might remember something you told them weeks ago. They may not say, "I care," but their behavior may quietly reveal that they are paying attention. This does not mean you should accept emotional crumbs. Care still needs to become consistent. But with an avoidant, effort often begins in a language that is easy to overlook. It is not always loud. It is not always romantic. It is not always verbal. Sometimes their care is hidden inside small acts of presence. The real question is whether those actions grow over time, because effort that never expands can become painful. But effort that slowly becomes more consistent can be a sign that they are learning how to stay connected in a way that feels safer to them. 4. They get scared when things become too real. Avoidants often do not fear casual connection. They can be charming in the beginning. They can be warm when things feel light. They can enjoy your presence when there is no emotional pressure. But when the connection becomes deeper, something changes. Suddenly, they may become distant. They may need more space. They may seem less responsive. They may act like the closeness that once felt good is now too much. And this is one of the most painful parts of loving someone avoidant. Because just when you think things are getting better, they pull away. But often, they're not pulling away because the connection means nothing. They're pulling away because the connection has started to mean too much. Real intimacy activates their fear. It brings up old emotional patterns. It makes them feel exposed. It forces them to face needs, feelings, and vulnerability they may have spent most of their life avoiding. So distance becomes their way of regaining control. Not because they want to hurt you, not because they are always playing games, but because emotional closeness can feel overwhelming to them. Still, understanding this does not mean you must tolerate instability. Their fear explains the behavior. It does not excuse the impact. You are still allowed to need clarity. You are still allowed to need consistency. You are still allowed to protect your peace. But if you're trying to understand whether their distance means they do not care, remember this. Sometimes the avoidant pulls away not because you mean too little, but because you are beginning to mean too much. 5. They slowly begin to trust you. Trust is not easy for an avoidant. They may want connection, but they often do not trust closeness. They may want love, but they do not trust what love requires. They may want to be seen, but they fear what happens after someone sees too much. So, in the beginning, they may keep everything controlled. They reveal only a little. They stay emotionally guarded. They share just enough to stay connected, but not enough to feel exposed. But if they truly feel safe with you, you may notice subtle changes over time. They stay in conversations a little longer. They share slightly more personal things. They stop running as quickly. They recover faster after conflict. They begin to let you see parts of them they normally hide. These changes may be small, but for an avoidant, small changes can be significant. Because trust does not arrive in one big moment. It builds quietly, layer by layer, experience by experience. They are watching whether closeness will cost them their freedom. They are watching whether vulnerability will be used against them. They are watching whether they can be imperfect and still not be abandoned. And when they begin to trust you, their walls may not disappear completely, but they become less rigid. They may still need space, but the space becomes less final. They may still get scared, but they do not disappear as deeply. They may still struggle, but they start trying to stay. That is where real progress begins. Not when they become perfect, but when they begin moving in the direction of openness. 6. They respect your boundaries. One powerful sign that an avoidant still values you is how they respond to your boundaries. Because avoidants are sensitive to pressure. If they feel controlled, chased, criticized, or emotionally cornered, their first instinct is often to withdraw. But when you express a healthy boundary and they actually try to respect it, that means something. Maybe you tell them you cannot keep doing hot and cold communication. Maybe you say you need honesty. Maybe you explain that you can give space, but you cannot accept disrespect. If they listen, even imperfectly, that matters. If they adjust, even slowly, that matters. If they try to understand your side instead of immediately shutting down, that matters. Because respecting your boundary requires them to stay emotionally present long enough to consider your needs. It means they are not only protecting themselves, they are also beginning to recognize that your feelings matter too. But here is the key. Respect must become reliable. If they respect your boundary one day and ignore it the next, then the pattern is still unstable. A healthy connection cannot survive on occasional awareness. It needs consistency. Not perfection, but reliability. Someone does not have to heal completely overnight to show you respect, but they do need to show that your emotional safety matters. 7. Their presence feels different when they are truly with you. There are moments with an avoidant when the distance seems to disappear. Not forever, not always, but for a little while, they are fully there. They listen, they soften, they stop performing, they stop defending. They are not trying to escape the moment, and you can feel it. The conversation feels more natural. Their attention feels real. Their energy feels calmer. Their eyes stay with you longer. Their words feel less guarded. These moments may confuse you because afterward, they may go back to being distant. But that does not mean the moment was fake. Sometimes it means the moment was real, and that is exactly why it scared them. For an avoidant, genuine presence can feel both beautiful and dangerous. It feels good because they want connection. It feels dangerous because connection requires openness. So, they may be present, then pull back, warm, then distant, open, then closed. But those moments of real presence show you something important. They show you that connection is possible with them. They show you that beneath the defenses, there is a person who can feel deeply. The question is whether those moments become more stable over time. If they become more frequent, more grounded, and more connected to real action, then there may be growth. But if they remain rare and disconnected from change, then they may only keep you attached to potential. And potential alone is not enough to build a relationship. 8. They are fighting themselves more than they are fighting you. The avoidant's biggest battle is often internal. From the outside, it may look like they are fighting the relationship, but inside, they are often fighting themselves. One part of them wants to come closer. Another part tells them closeness is unsafe. One part wants to be loved. Another part fears being needed. One part wants to stay. Another part only knows how to survive by leaving emotionally first. This is why their behavior can feel so contradictory. They miss you, but they do not say it. They care, but they act detached. They want connection, but they resist the very closeness they crave. They may not even fully understand their own patterns. They may only know that when things get too intimate, something inside them feels overwhelmed. So they create space. They shut down. They become quiet. They act like they're fine. But beneath that emotional control, there may be a storm they do not know how to explain. And this is why loving an avoidant can feel so painful, because you are not only dealing with what they show you, you are also feeling the weight of what they hide. Final message. If an avoidant is pulling away, it does not always mean they do not care. Sometimes it means they are scared. Sometimes it means the connection is touching something inside them they do not know how to hold. Sometimes it means they are caught between wanting closeness and fearing what closeness might cost them. But here's the truth you cannot ignore. Their fear may explain their distance, but it cannot become the reason you abandon yourself. You can understand them without losing yourself. You can have compassion without accepting confusion forever. You can recognize their struggle without making their healing your responsibility. Because love is not only about whether someone feels something, it is also about whether they are willing to grow enough to protect what they feel. So if they return, watch for growth. If they open up, watch for consistency. If they say they care, watch whether their actions can hold that care over time. Because an avoidant who truly values you may move slowly. They may struggle. They may need space. But little by little, they will show signs of movement, more honesty, more presence, more awareness, more respect, more willingness to stay when closeness feels uncomfortable. And if there is no movement at all, if the same cycle repeats without change, then you may not be witnessing healing. You may only be standing inside a loop, and you deserve more than a loop. You deserve a connection where love does not only return after distance. You deserve a connection where love learns how to stay.